Elizabeth Ann Duncan, hired 2 men to kill her pregnant daughter-in-law, jealous that the young mother-to-be threatened her incestuous relationship with her son Frank, 30. Duncan is one of 4 women executed in California's gas chamber. Elizabeth Ann Duncan, also known as Ma Duncan, was born about 1904. She was described as a grifter. It is said she had married 20 times and at one time operating a brothel in San Francisco. She had 1 child, Frank, and made him the center of her life. She also had a daughter, Patricia, who died at age 15. Under oath, Duncan admitted that she had 4 children in total, but loved Frank the most. At times distressed about her life, Elizabeth Duncan tried to commit suicide. During her recovery, she was cared for by a nurse, Olga Kupczyk, who is 30. Frank, then 29 and a lawyer, secretly married Kupczyk. Elizabeth Duncan interfered with them, showed signs of abnormal jealousy, and forced them to separate. By 1958, Olga was pregnant with their first child. In 1958, Olga Duncan disappeared. She was 7 months pregnant with the child by her husband Frank. Her mother-in-law Elizabeth Duncan first drew suspicion when police discovered she had illegally obtained an annulment of the marriage of her son Frank Duncan and his wife Olga. Elizabeth Duncan and Ralph Winterstein, 25, whom she hired, secured the separation by posing in court as the young couple. Just before midnight on November 17, 1958, Olga Kupczyk Duncan, 30, almost 8 months pregnant, heard a knock on the door of her Santa Barbara apartment. A nurse at Cottage and St. Francis hospitals, she had spent the evening playing bridge, knitting and chatting with 2 other nurses. They had left the apartment at 11:10 p.m. When she opened the door, she faced an agitated young man, who told her that her husband, Frank Duncan, was drunk in a car downstairs and that he needed her help to get him upstairs. Olga Duncan had not seen her husband in 10 days, not since he had packed up and moved back with his mother. Concerned, she pulled her quilted robe tight against the nighttime chill and accompanied the man, Moya, to the car. In the darkened backseat, Baldonado crouched low, pretending to be Frank Duncan. As Olga Duncan leaned forward to see her husband, Moya hit her head with the butt of a gun and pushed her inside. Baldonado grabbed her. Olga was stronger than they anticipated. Though stunned, she began to scream and struggled with Baldonado. The 2 men beat her again and again until she was bloodied and unconscious. Then they taped her hands together. The killers had talked of taking her body to Tijuana. But the 1948 Chevrolet sedan they had borrowed, they had paid acquaintance Sarah Contreras of Santa Barbara $25 for its use, was in no shape for such a long trip. Instead, they headed south on Highway 101 into Carpinteria, where they turned onto Casitas Pass Road because Baldonado remembered using that lightly traveled roadway to get to a winery near Ojai. Every time Olga Duncan came to during the drive, they beat her into unconsciousness. Finally, in one particularly vicious blow, the gun broke on her head. Almost 7 miles inside Ventura County, they stopped and dragged Olga's body down a small embankment. Because the gun was useless, they choked her until Baldonado, once an army medic, figured she was dead. They then dug a shallow grave in the soft silt at the edge of a drainage ditch with their bare hands and buried her and her unborn daughter. They left the wedding ring Frank Duncan had given her on her taped hands. Later, dirt would be found in her lungs indicating Olga had suffocated after being buried alive. Back in Santa Barbara, Baldonado and Moya ripped out the blood-soaked seat covers and tried to cover up by saying a cigarette had been dropped and caused a large burn hole. For their night's work, The killers had been promised a payoff of $6,000 from Ma Duncan. In the end, they received only the $137 she had given them before the murder to buy a gun and rent a car. Nearly a month later, investigators found the young woman's body in the Casitas Pass of Carpinteria, California. Augustine Baldonado, 25, confessed that he and Luis Moya, 22, had been offered $6,000 to kill her by Elizabeth Duncan, the victim's mother-in-law. They directed the police to the site of the body. According to the coroner in their confession, the two men kidnapped the woman, beat her with a pistol, strangled her, and buried her body in a shallow grave. She may still have been alive when buried. Elizabeth Duncan took the stand in her defense, admitting to talking to the two other suspects but saying they were blackmailing her. The jury took 4 hours and 51 minutes to find her guilty. She was sentenced to death in December 1958. After appeals, which upheld the lower court, she was executed by the gas chamber in 1962. Thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe.